All right, welcome on to CBS Sports HQ. We have a packed desk here. I'm Jacqueline D'Agostino, Chris Hassel, Kyle Long, DK, Pete Prisco. We're going to talk about free agency, of course, what we've seen looking ahead, and then also officially the start of the new league year, Chris.
Yes, and we still don't know where Aaron Rodgers is going to play, but Brett Favre has some advice for him. Brett Favre saying that he wants Aaron Rodgers to follow directly in his footprints, right? Green Bay, Jets, Vikings. Favre saying the Vikings is the best spot for Aaron Rodgers. If it's Aaron Rodgers' decision, Pete, should he go to Minnesota?
Aaron Rodgers, if he's making the decision, should run to Minnesota because it's a great situation. You got a great coach. You got the weapons. You can throw it around. They made Sam Darnold look good. They're gonna. I mean, Aaron Rodgers threw 28 touchdown passes last year. 28. He threw more than Mahomes. He threw more than Herbert. He threw more than a lot of guys. He wasn't bad last year. But I will say this. If you're the Vikings, why would you do that to your young quarterback? It makes no sense from that standpoint. Because if you're truly all in on J.J. McCarthy, you don't bring Aaron Rodgers in to be the #1 quarterback. So I think from that standpoint, it's not good for the Vikings. It would be great for Aaron Rodgers.
What he said. I mean, really, I agree. I agree in totality. It's a great situation. Agree with you on what they did with Sam Darnold. And Kevin O'Connell is a quarterback whisperer of sorts. The talent on the outside is there. You could win. You could be a playoff team. But my massive question is, I don't think Kevin O'Connell wants this to happen. I think from all indications and them willing to part ways with Sam Darnold and let him go tells you what they think of J.J. McCarthy. They've had a year to watch him. I know he's been rehabbing, but they get a feel of the leadership capabilities, the work ethic, how he relates with his teammates, how he is in the locker room. They are clearly there, and it is not a situation where I think you'd want to bring in Aaron Rodgers in this role of mentor. Where has that worked where it's like, oh, this is great, specifically with Aaron Rodgers, where he's going to be like, sure, after a year, I'll hand off the reins to you. It just typically doesn't work that way. So unless there is some alarm or concern about J.J. McCarthy, I think it's a bad move.
Yeah, unless there's some sort of rehab or injury setback that we're not aware of, then I would think that totally the Minnesota Vikings would be leaning on J.J. McCarthy. And with the instability that Aaron Rodgers had to deal with in New York, with the head coaching changes, the way the defense fell apart, fingers pointed, you wouldn't get that in Minnesota. So I understand why the Vikings would lend itself to a destination for Aaron Rodgers. They've got complete receiver room. They've got a brilliant young coach. They have a lot to offer and stability there. But the formational stuff, is that going to work with what Aaron Rodgers likes? I heard you complain all year about he just doesn't want to change his tune.
He doesn't like motion. He doesn't like pre-snap motion.
Getting with the times offensively. Kevin O'Connell's cutting edge. Would they be able to meet in the middle? I don't know, but I don't think it'll be Minnesota.
All right, so Aaron Rodgers is no longer there with the New York Jets, but Justin Fields is. He was out in Dubai celebrating that big contract that he got. And we saw, Sam Darnold, as you guys mentioned, have a, resurrected career in Minnesota, and then Baker Mayfield did it the year prior with Tampa Bay. Danny, I'll start with you. Do you think Justin Fields can kind of, do something similar under Aaron Glenn and this new regime with the Jets for his career?
It depends. I think it would look different than those guys who are more your pocket passers who are throwing. I mean, Baker Mayfield had 40 touchdown passes this year. He's been phenomenal throwing the football. I think it depends on the Jets' willingness to build an offense around Justin Fields and utilizing his legs and making him the type of quarterback that he was at Chicago, where he had 1,000 yards rushing, and saying, you know what, I know it's risky to run your quarterback, but we're going to throw out what we've always known and embrace the running capability. It puts the defense in such a bind when you have to respect that run game. It gives your running backs better counts. It keeps everybody has to be keeps them honest if a quarterback can run the football. A Jalen Hurts type of model, if you will, what they've done in Philadelphia. What I don't know is, are the Jets going to do that? I would hope so, considering that they brought him in. There has to be a plan to do that and give him a strong run game, much to like they gave Jared Goff in Detroit, and they saw the success they had there. But I would say you embrace the running ability. Jared Goff clearly is about as pocket passer as they get. Embrace the athleticism, embrace his ability to run, and I think he could.
Both of these teams that Justin Fields has been on have a locker room full of guys who really rally around and believe in Justin Fields. Now, it hasn't shaken out to give him a fair go at playing quarterback, but with this third stop in his career, I truly think it's an opportunity for him to take leadership in what has essentially been a void in leadership, with the head coach leaving last year, Aaron Rodgers departing this offseason. I hope for nothing but the best for Justin Fields, and I think obviously he's got some playmakers, but he's a tough guy. You can rely on him physically. He's never really been out of the lineup for very long for any of the teams he's been on.
You know, the thing about the Baker Mayfield stuff, we have to stop that. Baker Mayfield was really good his rookie year, and he got hurt, which is why it didn't work out in Cleveland. They decided to go make that wonderful move to go get Deshaun Watson and pay him a bunch of guaranteed money and give up all the picks that they did in the worst trade in the history of the National Football League. But that's an aside to the whole thing. But Baker Mayfield was a good player. Justin Fields has had moments where he's been a good player. Can he make those moments last? That's the question. Because you're right. You got to kind of cater it around to him, build it around him. But when you look at the Jets on paper, what were their other options? Play Tyrod Taylor? They had to get a quarterback. This is a 2-year quarterback. They'll give him a chance to show what he can do. If he does show well and he plays well, then you extend him and he's your quarterback. If he doesn't, then you're back in the pool and you're looking. But right now, they had to make that move.
Fields trying to work his way to one of those mega contracts that we've seen. Josh Allen resetting the market recently with a 6-year, $330 million deal that had $250 million guaranteed. But he said today it wasn't necessarily all about the money to him. He said he hopes it doesn't hinder the team at all.
I live a pretty good life. Got a house, got a car. We're good. But I wasn't looking to absolutely kill them in every chance that I could. And I told my agent that. I was like, hey, if this has any impact on the pack, or impact on the cap, I should say, let's figure out a way to not do that.
Yeah, you see the big numbers coming out and the record-setting money and the $250 guaranteed, but are there ways in there that he helped this Buffalo Bills team, Pete?
Well, his cap number this year was outrageous. It was $44 million. So just by doing the extension, it helped them in a great deal. He could have held out for more. He could have got more money. And look, I get it. He loves being in Buffalo. He's made a ton of money. I mean, you won't be able to spend all the money he's made in his career. But you know, guys get criticized around the league for leaving money on the table. That's a choice. You make that choice. You know,
Who's criticizing them?
Well,
I mean, if I'm
look
a
at
fan,
Chris
I
Godwin.
love
Chris
this.
Godwin got criticized for leaving money on the table. He didn't take all the money New England offered him. He wanted to stay in Tampa. He wants to stay in Buffalo. He likes Buffalo. Believe it or not, he likes Buffalo. People sit there and say, well, why do you like Buffalo? It's a small town feel. He's a small town guy. He enjoys Buffalo, and he likes playing there. New stadium on the horizon. What's not to like? They're close to winning the Super Bowl. So I think he might have taken a little less money. And you can criticize him for all you want for it, but he did. Tom Brady used
criticizing.
You hear people saying it all the time. Don't ever leave money on the table.
I think it's great. I think it should almost be expected of franchise quarterbacks these days if you want to win championships.
I think so too, but I guarantee there's some agents that don't like this. I guarantee there's some other quarterbacks potentially don't like this. Guys that always want to. What is the mantra that we've heard? The latest quarterback is going to break the record. He's not up there with Dak Prescott, who has the $60 million average annual value. He's at 55. You clearly should be above that. If you could have commanded that if you really took a hard stance and were like, no, I want to be the highest paid quarterback in the league coming off your MVP season. I think this, and I don't even know if Josh Allen had much to do with this. I think the team probably approached his agent and said, hey, we'd like to rework his deal, move some of the money around so we can create some cap space in the near term. We'll give him a bunch of it guaranteed because they trust him as their franchise. They weren't going to let him go anywhere. This is just about making the smart move for the longer term because he'll probably get another extension or a rework deal in 2 to 3 years, just like Patrick Mahomes did when he was with the Chiefs. Remember his mega deal that was 10 years and was like, oh my gosh, look how much money it was. Over the course of time, you're like, oh, that wasn't that much money compared to what he could have gotten.
Yeah, I remember when I first got in the league, it was Tyron Smith signed 10 years, $100 million. And I was like, oh my God, like, that's baseball money. Right. Well, now you got these quarterbacks settling for the $230 million mark, and it's unbelievable. And you know what? They're a lot different than those pass rushers. Myles Garrett goes out and gets that deal. Micah Parsons is laughing it up. But Patrick Mahomes, he's pissed. All these guys, Joe Burrow, waiting in the wings to get their new deal. But for the Buffalo Bills, this is incredible because the only thing that you know is we have to lock this guy Josh Allen up because he is that special. He's that important to our team.
All right, guys, we certainly appreciate it, and more to discuss in terms of the NFL coming up on the other side with Pete, Danny, and Kyle. We got to talk about some change because people say change is good. The Eagles, they're dealing with a whole lot of that, especially on defense. But can Philly find a way to thrive with that change next season? We're going to discuss with the guys coming up.
Or lose.
Hey, the Eagles must be paying that Super Bowl tax, huh? They had 6 players from their incredible defense that have left them already. Here are several of them. It's the cost of winning. Price goes up, for many of your own players when they show they can win. They had 2 of the top 6 ranked free agents at CBSSports.com. Both of them headed elsewhere. Josh Sweat to the Cardinals, Milton Williams to the Patriots. They still have great offensive weapons, though. Jalen Hurts included. But our Pete Prisco has said repeatedly he does not believe he's a top-flight quarterback. And that really upsets some people, including, I believe it's the producer of the Pardon My Take podcast.
And then he wins the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden he's become the greatest quarterback in the history of the National Football League. He's a good quarterback. Would I take Baker Mayfield over him for the next 5 years? Yeah. And by the way, you say, what did Baker Mayfield do? When Baker Mayfield was in Cleveland, he was really good. Then he got hurt.
He won a single wild card game.
Huh?
He won one playoff game. With a very good offensive line and a very good run game, which you like to diminish Jalen Hurts for. Ooh. They had the number 3 run game and the number 1 offensive line in the league. That's what Baker Mayfield has done. And that's what you like to diminish Jalen Hurts for.
Max prepared.
You picked them to lose every game in the playoffs, so you didn't think that they were that good.
I didn't pick them to lose. I didn't pick them to lose every game.
You picked them over the Rams. You picked the Packers over them. You picked the Commanders over them. You picked the Chiefs over them. So you didn't think that they were that good.
Yes, I was wrong about that.
Okay, Pete. That was what? Yesterday? Yesterday on the podcast. This all started because you said you'd rather have quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence, like Baker Mayfield over Jalen Hurts. And I know these guys on this set agree with that sentiment. Why do you think that's so hard for other people to understand?
Well, it's hard for Eagle fans to understand. And they came at me when I did that, which was about, the week of the Super Bowl, right? 3 days after the Super Bowl, they just violently came after me. And I went on a radio station up there and got after it. And then it kind of died down. And then these guys put me on, and look, I've gone on that podcast many a time. I love those guys, but that was something I didn't expect.
Who was that guy attacking you?
He was the producer, so he's an Eagles fan, and so I understand it, and I was ready for him. Like I said, I pointed him out.
Right. Pete's always ready to throw down.
He's ready, baby.
Look, when you look at the Eagles' offense and you rank the 4 units, offensive line, number 1. Running back Saquon Barkley, number 2. The receiving group, number 3. Jalen Hurts, number 4. So like I said, technically he's the weak link of the offense. He's a good quarterback. He's just not what they try and portray him as. And how many guys, and we talked about this, how many guys could win the Super Bowl with that team playing quarterback?
Yeah, I think it's important to point out the fact that we're not arguing that Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback because he's a Super Bowl champion. He outplayed Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl loss. So it's not like to pump your brakes on us trying to diss Jalen Hurts. But what we're trying to do is point out to the fact that there could have been a handful, maybe a dozen guys that would have won the Super Bowl as well.
Yeah, is it more than 10, you think?
You know, I'd have to make the list here, but they're killing my guy Pete Prisco. I want to make sure that this is a fair trial for you. And what we're saying is there are probably a lot of guys who could have won the Super Bowl with that Philadelphia Eagles roster.
What were the names you said that he would take over?
Trevor Lawrence, Baker Mayfield. Those were 2 of the big ones.
You know who else would take those 2? 32 NFL GMs. 32. I think 32 out of 32. If they were starting a team and they could pick their quarterback, it's one of the reasons those guys were number 1 overall picks. They are physically more impressive and more gifted than Jalen Hurts is. Jalen Hurts is an incredible story of perseverance, of what he's been through in college, developing as a passer, developing in the NFL, having the intangibles that it takes from inside the locker room, holding his players accountable. He's been clutch, too. He stepped up big in those situations. All that, like, I agree with you. It feels like you're crushing Jalen Hurts to say, oh, well, he's not a top 10 quarterback or he's not a top 5 quarterback, wherever you draw that line.
Do people understand how hard this game is?
Right, exactly. The fact that he's in this conversation, the fact that he's got a Super Bowl trophy should speak for itself, but it doesn't diminish him to say that there are other quarterbacks that could have done the same thing within that system.
And what I say is I think there are 5 elite quarterbacks in this league. 5. Jaden Daniels is now one of them. 6 through 15, you can move them around any way you want to. They're basically all the same. So my point was, for the next 5 years, that's what I was asked. Would I rather have Trevor Lawrence? Yes, I'd rather have Trevor Lawrence for the next 5 years. And by the way, if we're getting down the list of quarterbacks who could have won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, Danny Kanell at his age might have won this year. Right
Let's
now.
not go that far.
Yes,
Let's not
get
go
up.
that
Let's
far.
go.
No.
But I do think it's the statement, you can win, like the top 5 guys, you can win a Super Bowl because of them, because they carry you to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And there's a lot of guys you can win a Super Bowl with. That is Jalen Hurts. That's a lot of guys that won.
Danny, did you steal that directly from Pete? That's Pete's thing.
That is
I don't
my
know if
thing.
he invented it.
There's
a
win because of.
That's an I invented that.
Man.
Power rankings, I invented
I
them.
give
Come
Pete all
on.
the credit,
Come
man.
on. Win with and win because
He
of.
invented the forward pass term as well.
You know, I was back then. I was covering the league back then, so I might have.
No, and Danny, I remember when we were ranking the quarterbacks that were starting in the AFC and NFC Championship, and Jalen Hurts was number 4.
And no one was really arguing against it either.
No,
Everyone was, and it doesn't. And again, we say that he outplayed Patrick Mahomes. Did anybody see Patrick Mahomes running for his life, getting hit every single time he stepped back there? Like it's not like you're head to head with these other quarterbacks.
Right.
There's a defense. There's a totality of the team that comes in, which is why it's the greatest team sport that we know. But that still doesn't diminish the fact that other quarterbacks could have done the job that Jalen Hurts did and won a Super Bowl.
It's not like Michael Jordan playing against LeBron James in their prime. They would be going against each other. It's a different sport. You can't do it that way.
You know when we're going to find out if Jalen Hurts can win because of him? Probably this season coming up. Because the losses on defense, I don't think the defense is going to be as dominant. He's going to have to carry more of the workload.
Yeah, but I still
They
think
don't have to be as dominant as they were last year. They were so darn good that it was a dog and pony show in the Super Bowl. It might be a little bit more competitive now, but I'm not too concerned about the Eagles.
So how close are the Commanders getting? Because they went out and they gave Jaden Daniels one of his guys on the offensive front when they went out and made that trade for Laramie Tunsil. They're going to be a sexy pick in that division just because of all the people that the Eagles have lost and as young as this team is and the ascension that they made last year. How close is it?
I'm picking the Eagles. Again, the Eagles are loaded. I mean, the offense is loaded.
How close is
and
it?
the defense, you look, it's closer. But you saw that game and the way it played out in the playoffs. I think it's more, the game they beat them. Remember, Hurts got hurt in that game, and Pickett came in, and he moved the ball, but they still beat him. The Commanders did. I don't think it's as close. I think the Eagles are the class of that division. I think the Commanders are there, but not quite there yet.
It pains me to say as a fan of the Chicago Bears, but this guy, Jaden Daniels, is quickly becoming the one guy, like Patrick Mahomes, the guy in red in Kansas City, where you say, I just can't bet against him. He feels like he's got that magic behind him. And moving forward, they went and got the left tackle. Obviously, De'Ami Brown is out the building, but Laramie Tunsil is huge. The issue, I think, for the Washington Commanders moving forward is protecting him up the middle of the pocket. That's where their flaws got exposed a little bit in the crunch time of the season.
Well, they might move Coleman to guard. Cosby's hurt, so that'll be something they'll have to adjust to, too.
I'm also curious to see what Deebo Samuel does. What does he have left? Like, what kind of mindset does he come with?
Is he in shape?
Right. That's a big part of it. How does he fit into this locker room? I said yesterday, I'm a believer in the Commanders. The history of no one repeating and winning the division, the NFC East, it's a pretty long track record. It's really hard to keep your mojo, to keep your hunger, your desire to be the Super Bowl champ. Right after you come off one, you're losing a lot of key pieces on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm in on the Commanders winning the division.
Do they rush the passer well enough? That's the question. And they have some uncertainty there with some of their free agents as well. I think that's the one issue that could undo them is they don't rush the passer that well.
Has it really been 20 years since the team has repeated in that division?
Yeah. I knew it was
the
at least
Eagles
10.
with Andy Reid?
Yes.
Crazy.
So it feels like in the division we're talking about the Eagles, the Commanders, the Cowboys. We were kind of joking yesterday that they've, done a lot in re-signing their long snapper, and that was really it.
Kick returner.
That's good.
Kick returner, too.
I cannot forget about Turpin as well. But we do have a trade we want to talk about that we're just seeing here. The Bills are going to get a 5th and future 7th round pick from the Cowboys for Kaiir Elam and a 6th rounder. So, Pete, your initial thoughts on that full trade?
Kaiir Elam has been a bust. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. He was a high first-round pick. They drafted him ahead of Christian Benford, who has ended up being a better player, and now when they went into the lineup, he didn't play very well. So major disappointment. And I think that when you look at it from that point, the Cowboys are trying to, get a guy because they lost Jordan Lewis in free agency to Jacksonville. They're trying to get a guy to try and step in and play. But so far, the only way to look at Elam is as a bust.
Danny?
Yeah, Trayvon Diggs, back-to-back seasons with an ACL. This is trying to add some depth there. You know what this feels like to me? They was selectively aggressive. I think this feels cheap. Like they're trying to find guys that they can find value in, get them pretty cheaply. That's not a lot to give up to bring them in there, so they add a piece to the puzzle. But this is not going to do anything to change really the Cowboys' outlook as far as, wow, this moves the needle in the free agent market or the trade market at all.
Hopefully his talent shows up in a new destination. You know, he said
he's a talented kid. He just hasn't been able to. He hasn't made plays when he's been on the field, and for that reason, he hasn't been on the field as much. And when he has, he hasn't played well.
Would Cooper Kupp do much for them? He's now a free agent.
They need to get another receiving option, and so I would explore that if I were the Cowboys. I don't think there's any question they need another option to help take some of the pressure and the coverage away from CeeDee Lamb. But
that one makes a ton of sense.
Yeah,
I think.
Okay, Kyle. Cooper Kupp to the Cowboys?
I agree with these guys. Cooper Kupp anywhere. He's a coach and a player.
Problem is he doesn't run, so you better have somebody that can run.
Block his butt off.
You better have somebody who can run on the other side.
All right, guys, we certainly appreciate it. We'll have to keep an eye on the selectively aggressive Dallas Cowboys.